Late at night, the relentless thumping from the hotel room next door echoed through the walls, driving me absolutely insane. Caught in a reckless late-night impulse, I grabbed my phone and used an alt account to flirt with my recently divorced childhood friend. But when my eyes fluttered open the next morning, my childhood friend was right there in my bed, lying on her side, wide awake, burning a hole right through me with her stare. You see, Chloe, Brooke, and I, we all grew up together. Both of them were absolutely drop-dead gorgeous from day one, effortlessly charming and way too lovable, which, honestly, caused me more headaches than I could count. Chloe is exactly 1 year younger than me. Fast forward to now, and she's a total knockout with the undeniable aura of a young pop idol. I actually confessed my feelings to her twice back in college. The very first time, she shot me down with, you really shouldn't date someone from your own inner circle. But the second time, I made a real move, and we ended up dating for 3 solid years. Ultimately, though, she went abroad to study. The long distance crushed us, and we walked away with a pretty amicable breakup. Then there's Brooke, 2 years older than me, and as of recently, a divorcee. Her features are impossibly delicate and striking, paired with killer curves in all the right places. She is flat out stunning. After studying dance for years, she has this ridiculous elegance about her, instantly standing out in any crowded room. And yeah, she totally used to be the star of my late-night fantasies. Brooke came from crazy old money, but she never once acted like some spoiled rich brat. To me, she was always that deeply supportive older sister figure, so gentle, so kind. And as an adult, she only grew more intoxicatingly mature and sophisticated. Unfortunately, her fairy tale marriage was anything but happy. She was forced into a cold, corporate family alliance, tied down to an ex-husband who was, in the very first year of their marriage, her scumbag husband betrayed her for a manipulative side piece who looked exactly like his first love. Naturally, that toxic marriage ended in a lightning-fast divorce. Growing up, both of those girls had blossomed into absolute stunners, while I just felt like the exact same average guy, completely ordinary and totally predictable. After graduation, I bounced around a bunch of dead-end jobs that just didn't work out. Finally, thanks to Brooke pulling some strings, I became the newest corporate workhorse at her firm. Desperate to shut down any nasty rumors about nepotism, I practically killed myself working 12 hours a day, absolutely determined to prove my actual worth through cold, hard results. But to Chloe, who had just flown back into the country, it looked completely like Brooke and I were secretly hooking up. And Brooke, whenever she caught Chloe and me hanging out, she would shoot us this overly dramatic, knowing smirk, acting like Chloe and I had already reignited our old spark. The truth is, Chloe and I had stayed pretty good friends ever since our messy breakup. There was absolutely zero bad blood or toxic resentment, and honestly, there was no reason to burn bridges just because we used to share a bed. The very day Chloe landed, Brooke and I rushed to the airport together to welcome her back, and then we all hit up a sushi spot to celebrate. Right after eating, Brooke bailed early for some urgent business, leaving just me and Chloe alone in the room. Chloe quietly slid the door to our private room shut, covered her mouth, and let out a teasing little giggle. Brooke was sitting right across from you all night. With your perfect view, you definitely saw everything. Come on, did you sneak a peek? I mean, it was the dead of summer, and Brooke was seriously wearing next to nothing. Her skin-tight pencil skirt showed off every single curve of her gorgeous figure, but it wasn't my place to stare, so I just awkwardly shook my head. Chloe pouted, clearly not buying it for a second. Oh, give it a rest, you saint. Brooke is so incredibly into you. Every single time I come by, the two of you are mysteriously alone in her office. I started panicking. That is just a total coincidence. You really need to stop spouting that nonsense, or Brooke will literally end me if she hears it. Chloe just laughed again. What are you so terrified of? When we were little kids, you actually swore you were going to marry both me and Brooke. And when they told you the law says you can only have one wife, you bawled your eyes out. My face flushed bright red. I was just a dumb, clueless kid back then. Chloe gave a playful little snort. Dumb and clueless, my foot. Didn't you actually try to make it happen? First, you tricked me into dating you. And now that Brooke is single again, is your heart already itching for her? You have absolutely zero shame. I frantically tried to explain myself, denying it like my life depended on it. This woman seriously had zero filter. If her wild rumors reached the ears of anyone we knew, I would never be able to show my face in this town again. Just then, Chloe leaned in close, her breath brushing my ear as she whispered softly, Ethan, based on everything I have seen, you actually stand a real chance of winning Brooke over. You could totally experience the charm of a mature woman. I froze right where I stood, completely speechless with shock. Chloe's words landed like a heavy stone in my heart, sending wild ripples out in every single direction. I hurriedly took a huge gulp of barley tea, trying to swallow down my sudden discomfort. "Don't talk crazy," I shot back. "Brooke just looks out for me. She treats me like a younger brother." I tried to make my tone sound as dead serious as possible. Chloe tilted her head, flashing a smile like a mischievous little fox. "Oh, really, little brother? What kind of little brother makes her so heartbroken?" she teased. "How come I don't get that kind of special treatment as her own little sister?" I was completely speechless. It suddenly hit me. Brooke leaving work early and leaving Chloe and me behind wasn't just a coincidence. She was deliberately giving us time alone. After all, ever since Chloe and I had broken up, both of us had remained completely single. Brooke must have assumed we were just pining for each other, waiting for the perfect moment to get back together. Honestly, maybe we both actually harbored that exact thought, but neither of us knew how to start over again, especially since Chloe didn't have any concrete plans after moving back home. To top it off, she had just joined our company through Brooke's personal recommendation. Well, wasn't this just perfect? Office life was about to get a whole lot more lively. Chloe, Brooke, and I were now locked in an incredibly delicate, tension-filled triangle. Brooke was the vice president, making Chloe and me her direct subordinates. At the office, Brooke was as strict with me as ever, honestly. She was even harsher on me than she was on anyone else. But behind closed doors, her signature gentleness and warm care never wavered for a second. Whenever I was stuck working grueling overtime hours, she would quietly bring me my favorite late-night snacks. Or, when some difficult client was giving me a hard time, she would look at me softly and whisper, "Don't take it to heart. You've already done a wonderful job." Meanwhile, Chloe was like a chaotic little pixie with boundless energy, quickly becoming incredibly popular around the office. She effortlessly blended in, bonding with all our coworkers. But what she really seemed to love was putting on a show for Brooke, acting subtly intimate and playfully teasing me whenever her sister was watching. For example, right in the middle of our lunch breaks, she would very naturally pick out all the food she hated and drop it right into my bowl. Or, the second it was time to clock out, she would loudly demand that I drive her home, making absolutely sure Brooke heard her. Every single time this happened, Brooke would just offer us a gentle, polite smile. She would let her eyes linger briefly between the two of us, and then quickly make up an excuse to leave first, leaving us staring silently at her retreating back. I wasn't an idiot. I knew Chloe was doing this on purpose. She was using these little moments to test the waters. She wanted to see Brooke's true reaction, and in doing so, she was secretly reawakening a tiny, dangerous piece of my own childhood fantasies. After all, I was a healthy young guy in the absolute prime of my life. Both my computer and my phone held plenty of spicy adult material to keep my lonely nights occupied. Then came that fateful night. I was staying late to rush a project, and the entire office was completely empty, except for Brooke and me. She walked over gracefully, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. Handing one to me, she asked, "How come Chloe took off early today?" Her tone was incredibly casual, her delicate fingertips softly tapping against the rim of her cup. As I reached out to take the coffee, my hand accidentally brushed against hers. For a split second, both of us completely froze. "She said she had an appointment to get her nails done with a friend," I finally replied. Brooke just smiled softly and sat down at the workstation directly across from mine. She elegantly crossed her legs, causing the fabric of her tight skirt to stretch taut, beautifully accentuating her stunning, mature curves. My throat went dry. I immediately averted my gaze, staring intensely at the spreadsheets on my monitor as if my life depended on it. But with the heavy, quiet atmosphere between us, my traitorous mind couldn't help but recall certain late-night scenarios hidden deep in my hard drive. It felt exactly like the setup to one of those forbidden alone with the boss videos. If I'm being honest, I had spent more than one night lying in bed, helplessly fantasizing about Brooke. Of course, the moment reality set back in, my heart would be crushed by immense, suffocating guilt. But even so, Brooke's breathtaking figure kept flashing through my mind, utterly impossible to erase. As time went on, the terrifying truth hit me. I had actually fallen for Brooke. Brooke was mature, intellectually sophisticated, undeniably elegant, and possessed a dangerously alluring touch of sensuality. She was impossibly attractive. I found myself sinking deeper and deeper, and these secret, forbidden feelings began to quietly spread and grow around my heart like wild vines. Before I even realized what I was doing, I caught myself obsessively watching Brooke's every single move. Whenever she walked toward me with that confident, elegant stride of hers, my entire mind would instantly drift into a world of endless fantasies. I was completely trapped, especially by that subtle, intoxicating fragrance she wore whenever she leaned close to me. Combined with the sight of her gorgeous, curvaceous figure, it felt like a million ants were crawling directly over my racing heart, leaving me unbearably, feverishly restless. Soon enough, my head was so completely clouded with fantasies of being deeply intimate with her that I couldn't even focus on my work at all. I knew this was completely messed up. Brooke wasn't just my cold, strict boss. She was also the gentle, older sister figure who had practically watched me grow up. This whole situation was as hopelessly tangled as a knotted ball of yarn. Yet, the harder I tried to suppress these sinful thoughts, the more aggressively they fought back, sending my hormones completely into overdrive. Unfortunately, I was the classic underdog, all the burning desire in the world, but absolutely zero courage. In reality, I didn't dare make a single outrageous move, and once the physical rush faded and the sobering clarity hit me, I would immediately start tearing myself apart with overwhelming guilt. But for now, there was work to do. Our company was a subsidiary under the massive White Group, and since our team was just a new startup, our current scale wasn't very large yet. The departments Brooke ran were all crammed into one massive, open floor plan, featuring exactly 12 workstations. But that day, thanks to her private office getting a remodel, she ended up temporarily crashing at the desk right across from mine. Whenever I looked up, her absolutely flawless face was just inches away. And whenever I stood up, my eyes would completely involuntarily drift down to her incredible, eye-catching cleavage. She was a machine when she worked, and that little furrow in her brow was intensely charming. But my own productivity was already dead in the water. My brain was swimming in pure, unadulterated dirty thoughts. My lower half aggressively followed suit, standing right at attention. Feeling like a massive creep, I subtly shifted in my chair, trying to score a better viewing angle, right up until she snapped her head up and her eyes locked dead onto mine. She instantly slapped a hand over her neckline, her cheeks flaring bright red as she shot me a razor-sharp glare. That single, lethal look from Brooke turned my knees to absolute jelly, and I completely melted back into my chair. I threw my head down and started aggressively mashing my keyboard, my ears burning like a furnace. For the rest of the afternoon, I literally did not dare to look up even a fraction of an inch, slouching at my desk like a terrified little quail. I didn't even dare to take a sip of water. I kept my eyes glued to my lap and my nose buried in my work, even though my mind was completely short-circuiting. Out of nowhere, Chloe strolled over with her mug and tapped on my desk divider. "Ethan, what on earth are you doing? You look totally out of it. Do you have a guilty conscience or something?" My typing hand violently flinched, nearly snapping the delete key right off my keyboard. "It's nothing. I'm just rushing to meet a deadline." "Right." Chloe narrowed her eyes, radiating pure suspicion. Her gaze darted back and forth between Brooke and me a few times before she suddenly dropped her voice to a whisper. "Hey, did you just get busted sneaking a peek at Brooke?" My heart instantly flatlined. This girl's intuition was terrifyingly, brutally accurate. "What absolute garbage are you talking about?" I tried so hard to play it cool, but completely failed to control my volume. Half the office turned to stare at us, and Brooke slowly raised her head, locking a cool, steady gaze right onto our little corner. Chloe instantly flipped a switch, flashing a sickly, sweet, innocent smile. "Oh, Brooke, Ethan just said he's having trouble with some data, so I was offering to help out." Brooke just gave a faint murmur of assent, then dropped her head back to her work, letting her long hair spill forward to completely veil her face. I exhaled a massive sigh of relief, kicked Chloe lightly under the desk, and mouthed the words, "Dinner is on me tonight." She shot her eyebrows up in total triumph and whispered back, "Teppanyaki, the most expensive spot in the city." I honestly thought I had finally dodged a bullet, but I had no idea a much worse torment was waiting right around the corner. Brooke didn't actually seem pissed at me, but her hot and cold, push and pull attitude was pure psychological torture. For days on end, I was too terrified to even meet her eyes. But that whole dynamic shifted dramatically after one very specific business trip. Brooke dragged me along on an out-of-town business trip to put out a fire for a project. While we were on the plane, she kept venting about how the client gave zero advance notice, making the turnaround time an absolute nightmare. And since it hit right in the middle of a massive holiday weekend, everyone else in the office was already booked up. So it was just the two of us, scrambling at the last minute. The absolute second the plane hit the tarmac, we sprinted nonstop straight to the client's headquarters for the meeting, miraculously locking down a solution to their mess. By the time we finally wrapped everything up, it was already pushing 4 in the afternoon. Inside the cab back to the hotel, the tension was thick and quiet. Brooke leaned back against the leather seat, closing her eyes to rest, her face looking incredibly soft and vulnerable in the shifting city lights flashing through the window. I secretly obsessed over the delicate shadows cast by her long eyelashes, and those wicked, wildly inappropriate thoughts started bubbling right back up in my brain. I aggressively snapped my head away to stare out at the unfamiliar streets. The client had booked us a standard room with 2 beds. When the guy handed me the room key, my brain completely blue-screened. Brooke, however, didn't even flinch. Rooms are fully booked for the holiday. We'll just have to make do. She rolled her suitcase right past me, her high heels clicking sharply against the marble lobby floor. The room itself was actually pretty huge, and the 2 twin beds were kept at a perfectly safe, reasonable distance. Brooke dumped her luggage, stretched her arms over her head, and let out a heavy sigh. I am totally wiped. I'm hitting the shower first. You don't mind, right? Not at all. Nope, go for it. I waved my hands like an absolute maniac, practically biting my own tongue off in panic. The second the bathroom door clicked shut, that frosted glass painted a blurry, hazy silhouette of her body. I could literally watch every single motion as she slipped out of her clothes. Her perfectly voluptuous, shapely curves. God, they were enough to make any man's blood boil. The sound of rushing water echoed through the room, instantly wrapping the space in this thick, hazy, and incredibly intimate atmosphere. I immediately snapped my gaze away. My cheeks were burning up, so I forced myself to crack open my laptop and pretend to review project files. But my eyes just kept drifting right back to that frosted glass. The splashing water made it completely impossible to focus my mind on anything else. Through that blurry outline, I couldn't help but picture Brooke's every single movement, the vivid fantasies running wild in my head, the flashing images, and my wildly racing heart. It all left me unbearably restless. Eventually, the water shut off. Brooke walked out wrapped in a bathrobe, casually using a towel to dry her damp hair. The heat from the steam had left her cheeks flushed with this delicate, irresistible pink glow. You should go take a shower too, unwind a bit. Her tone was completely natural, just like when she'd invite me over for snacks when we were kids. I practically stumbled into the bathroom, my arms and legs moving completely out of sync. Right there on the vanity counter, she had left behind the intimate undergarments she had just slipped out of. The air was still thick, heavily perfumed with that totally familiar, intoxicating scent of hers, and my body reacted way before I could even stop it. Glancing down at my highly aroused state, and suddenly remembering how clearly you could see through that glass, I quickly turned my back away from the door. By the time I finally finished my shower and stepped out, Brooke had already changed into her pajamas. She was leaning against the headboard, tapping away on her laptop to reply to emails. It was just a conservative 2-piece set, but the silk fabric clung so tightly to her curves, still radiating an incredible amount of allure. Around 6 o'clock, the client called us down for dinner. The party was hosted in a private room at some local specialty restaurant. Brooke didn't exactly have a high tolerance for alcohol, so she just politely and gracefully sipped on a few glasses throughout the night. The rest of the time, I was the one keeping everyone company, throwing back a substantial amount of alcohol with the clients to cover for her. By the time the dinner finally wrapped up, it was already 10 at night. The booze had definitely started hitting me hard. My steps felt light and totally unstable, even though I was still reasonably clear-headed. Brooke supported me by the arm, flashing the clients a slightly apologetic smile. Ethan has a low tolerance. Sorry about that, everyone. Once we stumbled back into our room, the alcohol fully kicked in. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, groaning as I rubbed my throbbing temples. Brooke poured me a glass of warm water, wrung out a hot towel, and handed it over. Here, wipe your face. It'll make you feel a bit better, she said softly, standing right in front of me and leaning forward just a little. From this exact angle, my eyes happened to drop straight down into the deep, incredibly tantalizing cleavage exposed by the loose neckline of her pajamas. The alcohol heavily amplified every single one of my senses. That familiar, intoxicating fragrance of hers, mixed with the faint scent of body wash, crashed over me in waves. As I reached out to grab the towel, my fingers accidentally brushed against hers. For a split second, we both completely froze. Thank you, Brooke. I quickly lowered my head to scrub my face, desperately trying to hide my instantly racing heart and the unmistakable reaction of my body. Brooke didn't seem to catch my awkward embarrassment at all, turning around to neatly organize her belongings. We have absolutely nothing scheduled tomorrow morning, so you can sleep in. I've already booked the return flight for tomorrow afternoon. I murmured some vague reply, my mind completely and utterly jumbled. After we both finally laid down on our own beds, the room sank into pitch-black darkness and absolute silence. The only sounds were the steady hum of the AC and our light, quiet breathing. I kept my back stubbornly turned away from Brooke's direction. My body was stiff as a board, completely devoid of sleep. The alcohol made my blood run incredibly hot, leaving the dam of my rationality dangerously weak. I could distinctly hear the soft rustle of fabric whenever she tossed and turned. I could practically picture the gorgeous curves of her body lying there on her side. Just as I was desperately counting sheep, begging myself to fall asleep, the faint sound of something indescribable vaguely echoed from the room next door. Clearly, the soundproofing in this hotel was absolute garbage. A woman's suppressed, breathy groans and the rhythmic creaking of mattress springs leaked through the wall. In the dead of night, it sounded exceptionally clear and piercing. My entire body instantly froze, and in a single split second, all my blood seemed to rush straight to a place it had absolutely zero business going. It was literally like pouring gasoline on an open fire. In that pitch-black darkness, my raging senses were infinitely magnified. I could hear it. Over on the other bed, Brooke's breath hitched for a split second before she tossed and turned. Seconds later, her breathing grew heavy. An agonizingly awkward, tension-thick atmosphere swallowed the entire room. Fueled by sheer, reckless impulse, my fingers scrambled for my phone right next to my pillow. The harsh screen light hit my face. Between the alcohol and the wild noises next door, my brain completely short-circuited, and I logged into a secret burner account I almost never touched. The contact list was basically a ghost town. Without even thinking, I tapped Brooke's profile picture. "Are you awake?" I stared at those 3 words. My heart hammered so hard it threatened to crack my ribs. The exact second it sent, immediate, crushing regret hit me. My fingers shook as I tried to unsend it, but too late. The top of the chat instantly flashed, typing. Those few seconds, they dragged on for an absolute century. All the blood rushed to my head, then turned freezing cold. A wave of pure, gut-wrenching dread washed over me. What the hell was she going to think? Would she know it was me? No, wait. This account was completely wiped clean. There's no way she'd recognize me, right? But what if she just hits me with a giant question mark? I held my breath, my mind racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. The booze made my brain sluggish, but incredibly reckless. The room next door is pretty loud. I can't sleep. I bit the bullet and fired that off, desperately trying to steer things back to a totally normal explanation. This time, the wait was agonizing. So long, I was convinced she'd ghosted me, or worse, figured it out and was plotting my murder for tomorrow morning. Finally, my screen lit up. "Are you staying at this hotel too?" My heart literally skipped a beat. She didn't suspect a thing. She was actually playing along with this mystery guy. "Yeah, on a business trip." I typed back with extreme caution, sweating over every single letter. What a coincidence. Me too. Dead silence. I glared at the screen, an anxious itch clawing away at my insides. She was actually texting a complete stranger in the middle of the night. Would she show a totally different hidden side of herself to an unknown number? A toxic mix of thrill, guilt, and burning curiosity took over. Meanwhile, the wild noises next door were still going strong. I could hear my own ragged breaths, perfectly matching Brooke's erratic breathing right across the room. "I can't sleep," Brooke finally replied. "You saw right through me, mainly because the atmosphere makes it a bit hard to relax." Riding the wave, I boldly took it one step further. "The soundproofing is definitely terrible." Boom. She felt it too. Just like me, she was totally flustered by the chaos next door. "It's a long night. Guess nobody's sleeping." I tested the waters. "So, what do you want to talk about?" I peeked over at Brooke. The faint screen light lit up a lazy, almost playful smirk on her face. With an atmosphere like this, not bringing up something mature would be a massive waste. Screw it. But the second I hit send, instant panic. Too forward, too obvious. I was literally tap dancing in a minefield. How was she going to see this creep in her messages? Would she think I was some gross pervert and instantly smash the block button? The seconds ticked by. My screen dimmed, then went completely black like a silent judge condemning my massive screw-up. Right as I was drowning in utter despair. Flash! The screen lit up again. "What do you mean by adult topics?" Wait, no anger? No block? Her text even had a subtle, playful tease to it. This was completely off my bingo card. My blood was absolutely pumping now, bringing a dangerously intoxicating rush of adrenaline. For example, talking about what people usually think about on a sleepless night like this. I typed like a madman, my fingertips practically on fire. Hiding in the dark behind a fake profile gave me insane courage. And this time, Brooke replied fast. "Just the kinds of things adults think about." My stomach did a flip. "Like what?" I pushed, "Like certain fantasies triggered by raging hormones." When Enzo and Dex popped up, I practically dropped my phone on my face. All the blood rushed straight to my head. "Does that mean you're thinking about men?" Oh God. The wait this time was pure torture. The typing bubble on Brooke's end totally vanished. She just lay there, frozen. The phone's glow flickered across her features, masking her expression completely. I was a death row inmate waiting for the final verdict. Every passing second was agonizing. That last text was way too aggressive. I definitely just scared her off. She probably thinks this random guy is a total psycho. Right now, she's got to be debating whether to block me or just call the cops. What do you think? Just 3 simple words, followed by a deeply suggestive question mark. I gripped my phone tight, my palms totally slick with sweat, completely at a loss for how to even reply. Should I keep pushing her boundaries or just call it quits right here? While I sat there frozen in hesitation, the wild sounds from the room next door built toward another crazy climax. The woman's high-pitched cries pierced straight through the thin wall, clear as day. Without even thinking, I shot a quick glance over toward Brooke's side of the room. In the pitch black, she made this sharp, sudden shift, and her breathing grew noticeably heavier. Suddenly, my phone screen lit up again. Looks like the battle next door is getting pretty intense. Looks like we're a captive audience, she texted. Following her lead, I tried to lighten the mood a bit, even though my fingertips were trembling from pure nerves. A free live show, I replied. It would be a total waste not to listen. Brooke's reply carried this rare, almost mischievous hint of teasing. This was completely unlike the dignified, highly sophisticated woman she always played during the day. The alcohol and the heavy darkness fueled my courage, and a wildly crazy idea completely hijacked my brain. Just listening is pretty boring. Maybe we can make tonight a little more unforgettable. The exact second I hit send, I squeezed my eyes shut. I could practically hear my heart hammering violently against my ribs. I was playing with fire, and this blaze was about to spin totally out of control. This time around, Brooke didn't reply right away. In the dead silence, there were only the fading moans from next door and my own heavy breathing. I could even hear the sounds coming from her bed. Her soft, shallow breath sounded like she was desperately holding something back. Then, my phone screen flashed bright once more. Like how? Just 2 simple words. Yet, they acted like a master key, instantly unlocking the cage, holding the wild beast captive inside my heart. All my lingering doubts and rationality just crumbled right into dust. At that exact moment, I took a deep breath, my fingers flying at lightning speed across the glass. I was typing something so insanely bold that I actually shocked myself. Like playing a game. We matched the rhythm of the room next door, using their sounds as our cue. The moment I hit send, I felt practically drained of all my energy. This was no longer just me testing her boundaries. This was a completely naked invitation. I left the ultimate choice entirely in her hands. A sharp, almost invisible breath came from Brooke's bed. My phone stayed totally silent. She didn't reply with a single word. But just a few seconds later, I heard an incredibly faint, shuffling rustle of fabric coming from her side of the room. Then came a short, muffled gasp, so quiet it felt like a figment of my imagination. Yet, it slipped with absolute crystal clarity straight into my ears. This silent interaction carried a massive impact, one far greater than any explicit words ever could. The anonymous chat and the sounds of reality completely intertwined, creating this incredibly bizarre, blood-pumping sensation of sheer, raw excitement. No longer satisfied with just words alone, and riding high on that wave of pure madness, I just kept typing away on my phone. Is just imagining it a bit too abstract. Maybe we could use a little assistance. What kind of assistance? She replied lightning fast, her words carrying a curious, searching tone. For example, tell me what kind of pajamas you're wearing right now. This time, every single second of waiting felt like absolute torture. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, terrified of missing even a single flash. Brooke's breathing seemed to grow even clearer, carrying this indescribable heavy rhythm to it. Finally, her reply popped up. It was incredibly brief, yet more than enough to make the blood in my entire body rush straight to my head. Silk, it's very smooth. Something just snapped inside me. All my restraint and rationality completely collapsed. Coupled with her highly suggestive message, the wild fantasy and her faint silhouette in the dark formed an incredibly vivid picture in my mind. I couldn't suppress my body's physical reaction any longer, and a low, muffled groan escaped from the back of my throat. Almost at the exact same time, a much more distinct sound came from the other bed. A soft, trembling gasp of pure pleasure. And then, everything fell right back into absolute silence. Without me even noticing when, the crazy sounds from the room next door had completely stopped. The only things left in the room were the two of us, our heavily suppressed yet still totally audible breaths intertwining in the pitch-black darkness. I carefully typed back. The sounds next door stopped. How about we make the people next door our audience instead? I had absolutely no idea how long I waited, but no new messages ever came through on my phone. Suddenly, Brooke got out of bed and walked straight into the bathroom. There wasn't a single sound coming from inside. Aside from the light turning on, it was as if nobody had gone in there at all. During that tense, silent wait, heavily fueled by the alcohol, a wave of drowsiness suddenly washed over me. Drifting into my dreams, I vaguely seemed to hear the soft, pattering sound of running water. I drifted in this heavy, intoxicating haze, trapped somewhere between being asleep and fully awake. It felt like an absolute eternity had passed. Yet, at the exact same time, it felt like just a single, fleeting second. Deep inside that vivid dreamscape, the bathroom door was gently pushed open, and a soft, warm mist of water vapor slowly drifted out into the room. Through that hazy steam, Brooke suddenly appeared right in front of my eyes, wearing nothing but a single bath towel. The towel slipped loose, falling away, as her warm, soft body pressed tightly against my bare skin. The whole sensation felt completely, terrifyingly real. I was just like a desperate traveler who had wandered a scorching desert for ages, finally stumbling upon a sweet, life-saving spring of fresh water. Every rational thought vanished, leaving nothing but an intense animalistic urge to claim her. I drowned myself completely in this hyper-realistic dream, finally indulging a deep desire that I had kept desperately suppressed for way too long. I clung tightly to her body, holding on so desperately like the two of us were about to physically melt into one single being. I completely lost track of all time until, right in the middle of a violent, spinning rush of dizziness and a massive wave of pure release, I completely lost consciousness, sinking like a stone into a heavy sleep. It was an exceptionally deep slumber, yet somehow, it left my entire body feeling unbelievably drained and exhausted. That crazy dream had been way, way too realistic. It was so intense that when my internal alarm clock finally woke me up, with bright sunlight violently piercing right through the hotel curtains, my entire body still held on to that heavy, extreme exhaustion, intensely mixed with a lingering, phantom sense of absolute satisfaction. I forced my groggy eyes open, my chaotic thoughts still totally scrambled and not even close to being put together, honestly wanting nothing more in this world than to just roll over and keep sleeping the day away. But the very second I turned my neck, my gaze locked dead on with a pair of bright, shining eyes, resting literally inches away from my own face. Brooke was lying right there on her side, right next to me, her head resting softly on the other pillow. The distance between us was so insanely close that I could actually feel her warm breath gently brushing against my cheek. She had very clearly been wide awake for quite a while already and was just lying there, quietly staring right at me. Time seemed to completely freeze in its tracks at this exact moment. The blood in my veins instantly ran ice cold, and every single trace of sleep vanished into thin air. The fragmented, blurry memories of last night came violently crashing back into my mind like a massive tidal wave, flooding into my brain all at once. The stressful business trip, awkwardly sharing a hotel room, those highly questionable sounds coming from the room next door, the incredibly reckless, impulsive chat on my burner account, those crazy, bold, and unhinged conversations, the distinct sound of running water in our bathroom, and then that specific event. It suddenly hit me like a ton of bricks. Brooke and I were literally sleeping in the exact same bed right now. Holy crap, that was not a dream last night. At the very least, not all of it was a dream. I tried to bolt upright in a total panic, but because the sudden movement was way too jerky, it instantly strained my incredibly sore muscles, forcing me to gasp out loud in sharp pain as I awkwardly collapsed right back down onto the soft pillow. Brooke. My voice came out completely dry and horribly raspy, thick with obvious panic and utter, absolute disbelief. Brooke seemed totally amused by my completely frantic reaction, and the delicate corners of her mouth twitched upward, curving into a very faint, almost teasing smile. She didn't bother answering me right away, choosing instead to just keep staring at me with that intense gaze, a look that literally made my scalp tingle with sheer, overwhelming nervousness. Only after letting me sweat it out did she finally take her sweet time to speak, her voice carrying a slight hint of raspy hoarseness from having just woken up, sounding incredibly lazy and undeniably sensual. "Morning, Ethan. Did you sleep well?" Her tone was just so terrifyingly calm, exactly like someone casually asking what the weather was like outside today. But to my panicking ears, it honestly sounded like the most horrific, absolute final judgment imaginable. Did I sleep well? How on God's green earth was I even supposed to begin answering that? If I said yes, how could it possibly be bad when I was completely tangled up with you in my wild fantasies? But if I said no, considering our current, highly compromising situation, is my sleep quality even the main freaking issue here? My mind completely short-circuited, going dead blank as cold. Nervous sweat instantly soaked right through the back of my pajama. I took a lightning-fast, terrified peek beneath the thick blanket. Thank God, I was actually still wearing my pajama shirt and pants from last night. I forced my racing heart to calm down, frantically scanning for any hidden clues from Brooke's unreadable expression or the messy hotel room around us. The belt of Brooke's silk bathrobe was tied with absolute, flawless neatness, and her neckline was very securely closed up. However, her hair wasn't nearly as perfectly smooth as it usually was, carrying a heavy bit of that beautifully messy, fluffy bedhead look. Her soft cheeks were flushed with a healthy, glowing pink, and her eyes looked incredibly bright and almost watery. Her entire being just seemed to radiate this gorgeous, alluring charm, the kind of heavy afterglow that only really comes after a person has been thoroughly, deeply satisfied. This specific look of hers actually bore a 70 to 80% resemblance to the exact way she looked when she was completely overwhelmed with fiery passion in my dream. Oh man, I am completely, utterly screwed. Only those exact words were left loudly echoing inside my empty brain. Brooke, did I stammered incoherently, having absolutely no idea how to even construct a proper, functional sentence. Brooke didn't even try to directly answer the wild, screaming confusion clearly showing in my eyes. She lightly propped her upper body up, and the neckline of her silk robe parted slightly with the fluid movement, opening a tiny, dangerous gap to reveal her delicate collarbone. She looked right down at me, her piercing gaze slowly sweeping across my face, which was frozen completely rigid with absolute, sheer panic. And then, she suddenly let out a soft, highly amused chuckle. Why are you looking so utterly terrified? You drank way too much alcohol last night and ended up throwing up all over yourself right in the middle of the night. I really had no other choice but to help clean you up a bit. But you clamped onto my arm and flat out refused to let go, no matter how hard I tried to pull away. I was completely drained after dealing with you, so I just crashed right there next to you. She dropped this bombshell with total nonchalance, brushing it off like she was just talking about the weather. Her explanation made total sense, honestly. I had way too much to drink, and she stepped up to babysit my drunk self. I was the one who wouldn't let go of her arm, and since she was dead on her feet, she was basically forced to share the bed with me. It all pieced together perfectly. I am so incredibly sorry, Brooke. I was such a massive pain in the neck. I rushed to apologize, my face burning up like a literal furnace. Honestly, I just wanted the floor to swallow me whole right then and there. Don't sweat it, Brooke murmured softly. She tossed the covers aside and slid out of bed, casually smoothing down the wrinkles in her bathrobe. Go grab a shower. You smell like a brewery. I am heading back to my own bed. Walking barefoot across the carpet, she made her way over to the other bed. The hem of her robe swayed with every single step, perfectly showing off the gorgeous curve of her legs. I just sat there staring blankly as she walked away. My brain was completely fried, nothing but a tangled, chaotic mess. That dream, it was just way too real. So intensely vivid that even now I could clearly remember the exact feeling of it. I could still hear her soft, muffled gasps right against my ear and physically feel that overwhelming sense of burning heat and wild intimacy. But if that was not a dream, how the hell was Brooke acting so incredibly chill right now? How could she be so totally unfazed if something like that had actually happened between us? Moving like a robot, I dragged myself out of bed. My legs felt like absolute jelly as I stumbled into the bathroom, clicking the door shut behind me. I cranked the shower handle, letting the hot water wash all over me. Pressing my back against the freezing tiles, I squeezed my eyes shut, desperately trying to piece together the blurry memories of last night. Wait a second. My eyes snapped wide open, locking onto the floor right by the doorway. It was bone dry and spotless, not a single drop of water in sight. If Brooke had actually dragged me in here last night to clean me up, there is absolutely no way the floor would be this perfectly dry. Did that mean, from the moment she supposedly walked into the bathroom to everything spicy that happened after, it was all just a crazy hallucination? Was it really just some insanely graphic fantasy my mind completely made up? A wild trip fueled by way too much booze, those questionable noises from the next room, and that sketchy anonymous chat? Figuring that out let me breathe a massive sigh of relief, but that was instantly crushed by a heavy wave of pure embarrassment and self-loathing. Ethan, you absolute idiot. You are actually thirsting over your boss so hard that you hallucinated an entire, ultra-realistic night of passion with her. Glancing down at myself, all those intense, steamy scenes from the dream came crashing right back into my brain, uninvited. Standing there under the hot water, I shamefully felt my body reacting all over again. All I could see was Brooke's face from the dream, totally overwhelmed by desire. Those hazy, half-lidded eyes, her slightly parted red lips, and the intoxicating rise and fall of her curves. A deeply guilty thought crept into my head. What if? What if it wasn't just a dream after all? My hand unconsciously picked up the pace, and my breathing turned heavy and ragged, echoing over the rushing sound of the shower. Letting out a low, rough groan, I slumped heavily against the shower wall, letting the hot water wash all the evidence down the drain. But as soon as that massive rush of relief faded, an even darker cloud of emptiness and intense guilt swallowed me whole. I was literally taking care of my own needs while fantasizing about Brooke. This felt like a total betrayal of our entire working relationship. I rushed to finish washing up, threw on a fluffy bathrobe, and stepped back out into the room. My face was still flushed red, wearing an expression of absolute, undeniable guilt. Ever since that fateful business trip, right beneath the surface of our supposedly normal dynamic, it felt like some invisible line had already been crossed. To everyone else, we were business as usual. We were just the fiercely strict vice president and her dedicated, overworked subordinate. Back at the office, she was still just as ruthlessly demanding as she always was. And since our major project hit a critical milestone, her standards were actually way more punishing than before. Whenever I pulled a stressful all-nighter for a pitch, she would casually tear it apart, sniping every single flaw and making me rewrite the whole thing until it was literally perfect. Now and then, when we bumped into each other grabbing coffee in the break room, she would casually ask, "Getting enough sleep lately?" Her eyes would look totally calm and unfazed, like sharing a hotel bed that crazy night had literally just been her taking care of a sloppy, drunken little brother. Totally innocent, strictly professional, and completely shutting down any of my wild fantasies. Meanwhile, Chloe was as hyper as ever, buzzing around the office like a chaotic social butterfly. Every so often, she would peek over my cubicle wall to spill some hot gossip or whine about Brooke working me straight into the ground. "Brooke's only got eyes for you now, Ethan." "I'm practically old news," Chloe joked, her tone walking a tightrope between playful banter and deadly serious. But make no mistake, her eyes were secretly watching my every move like a hawk. I could only force a stiff, bitter smile to brush it off, though my chest tightened with a massive wave of guilt. After all, the lines between a guy and a girl are easily blurred. The fact that we had shared the exact same hotel room? Yeah, that was a deeply buried secret, locked strictly between the two of us. And Brooke, she was actually still messaging my secret alt account in private. The crazy part, she knew exactly who she was talking to. Every single time I remembered how I had buried my head in the sand that night, playing completely dumb, I cringed so hard I prayed for the floor to just swallow me whole. She kept seamlessly switching back and forth between messaging my main account and my alt account, almost like she was rocking a total split personality. On my main profile, it was just our usual, by-the-book professional office interactions. There, I was nothing more than her loyal subordinate and the younger brother figure. But on my alt account, even though our chat stayed perfectly appropriate, it gave me this overwhelming feeling that she was drawing closer. Or, more accurately, she was visibly letting her guard down, way more relaxed and open. She treated me like a real male friend on totally equal footing, definitely more than just friends, but not quite lovers. While I played the shy and reserved nice guy in the real world, I totally let my guard down and went wild on my alt account. During those late-night chat sessions with Brooke, I would boldly tease her out of nowhere. And Brooke, glued to her phone screen from across the room, constantly had to cover her mouth to muffle her soft, sudden bursts of laughter. Chloe, completely clueless to our little secret, would just shoot Brooke these deeply suspicious glares. "Brooke, what exactly are you looking at that's got you grinning like that?" Catching herself, Brooke hurriedly slammed her phone face down and scrambled to explain. My little nephew back home lost his balance and took a funny little tumble." My face instantly darkened. She was literally taking a cheap shot by calling me her nephew. Chloe whipped her head back toward me, her eyes narrowed in confusion. "Ethan, have you started dating someone behind my back recently? Why else are you staring at your screen and furiously typing all day long?" My heart instantly slammed against my ribs, and I rushed to shut the accusation down. "What absolute nonsense are you spewing? I am currently coordinating urgent project requirements with a major client. I am literally busy out of my mind here." Forcing myself to keep a poker face, I locked my phone and aggressively dragged my attention back to the spreadsheets on my monitor, aggressively mashing a few random keys. "Oh, really now?" Chloe drawled out, clearly not buying a single word of it. She pouted her lips for a second, but then a sly grin crept onto her face as she lowered her voice. "Hey, seriously, man, you have been acting super weird lately. You are always staring at your phone, smiling like a total idiot with this distracted, dreamy look on your face. It literally screams, 'I'm in love.' You are acting exactly the same way you did back when we first started dating. Those words hit me like a sniper's bullet, stabbing precisely into the most guilty, vulnerable spot in my chest. Without even thinking, I shot a nervous glance over at Brooke's workstation right across from me. She kept her head down, pretending to be deeply engrossed in some documents. But I could see it, the corners of her lips were curving into the faintest, teasing smile. Stop making blind guesses, I snapped back. I am truly just completely swamped with work right now and can't break away. Chloe didn't back off. Instead, she leaned in even closer, her breath lightly brushing right against my ear. Oh, come off it, Ethan. Let me tell you right now, if you actually are in a secret relationship, you absolutely have to tell me first. I need to vet this mystery girl, for Brooke's sake, and honestly, for my own sake too. You got it? She emphasized Brooke's name with crystal clear intention, her eyes drifting with a dangerously heavy implication straight toward our boss's desk. A freezing layer of cold sweat instantly broke out across my entire back. Damn it. This girl's intuition was terrifyingly accurate. Could she have actually sniffed out the truth? No way. Brooke and I had been acting absolutely flawlessly around the office. The only subtle changes existed in tiny, invisible details that nobody else would ever notice. That, and within the digital walls of that highly secret WeChat alt account. Fine. I will tell you first, Princess Chloe, I replied dismissively, waving my hands, wanting absolutely nothing more than to quickly shoo her away. Only then did Chloe finally straighten up. Flashing a totally satisfied smirk, she started humming a cheerful little tune as she proudly sauntered back to her own desk. I let out a massive, shaky breath of relief. But the second I raised my head, my eyes deadlocked with Brooke's intense gaze from across the room. She quickly broke contact, averting her eyes as she grabbed her coffee mug and stood up to head to the water cooler. Her retreating figure looked flawlessly elegant and composed, as if nothing had just happened. Soon after, the project finally hit its ultimate crunch time. Brooke grabbed Chloe, myself, and a handful of other elite core team members, dragging us into the trenches. We spent day and night completely holed up in that stuffy conference room. The brutal, non-stop, high-intensity grind left every single one of us looking like absolute zombies. And yet, the atmosphere crackled with this weird, unstoppable collective drive. Why? Because Brooke was the absolute beating heart of this team. Dressed in a sharply tailored skirt suit, she stood dead center in front of the glowing projector screen, firing off tasks with total, icy composure and undeniable authority. Seeing that overwhelming strategic confidence and razor-sharp brilliance she radiated while flawlessly running the entire show, it was impossible to look away. The fierce boss mode she was rocking right now was a total 180 from the lazy, gentle side she only showed behind closed doors, hitting me with this crazy, irresistible pull. Sitting in the audience, I hung on to every word of her crisp, cool voice. But my eyes, they had a mind of their own, drifting along the sharp lines of her back, tightening every time she raised her hand before trailing all the way down to her insanely slender ankles, perfectly framed by those killer high heels. Out of nowhere, the scorching memory of how her bare ankles felt in that wild dream during our business trip hit me like a truck. I had to pinch my thigh, black and blue, just to snap back to reality. Come on, Ethan, get your head in the game. We are on the clock. By the time we finally wrapped things up, it was already 10 p.m. Brooke clapped her hands together, her voice ringing loud and clear even with that heavy edge of exhaustion. Amazing hustle today, everybody. Go home and get some serious shut-eye. Tomorrow is do or die. The company ordered a massive late-night feast, so grab a bite before you hit the road. Right on cue, the admin team rolled in the food cart, and the mouth-watering smell of takeout instantly brought the whole office back to life. As the crew swarmed the food, the suffocating tension in the room finally melted away. My stomach was tied in knots, so I just grabbed a black coffee and leaned against the window. Not hungry? You've still got a brutal all-nighter ahead of you. Brooke's voice floated over from right behind me. I spun around. She was picking at a tiny bowl of fruit salad, leaning casually against the sill. Just not feeling it tonight. I smiled, though my chest tightened when I spotted the faint, exhausting dark circles under her eyes. Brooke, you seriously need to pace yourself too. You've been burning the candle at both ends harder than anyone. Brooke just stabbed a blueberry with her little plastic fork, playing it completely cool. I'm used to the grind. Once we crush this bid, I promise everyone is getting a monster bonus this year. She froze for a split second, then suddenly looked up, locking eyes with me. And when this nightmare is over, you need to take a real vacation and properly unwind. The heavy, loaded look in her eyes hit me right in the chest. That phrase, properly unwind, felt like a secret code just between us. My heart did a massive backflip, and I could barely choke out a muffled nod. Out of nowhere, Chloe crashed the party, balancing a plate stacked like Mount Everest, awkwardly wedging herself right between the two of us. Brooke, Ethan, what kind of juicy top-secret gossip are you two whispering about in the corner? Her cheeks were puffed out like a chipmunk full of food, but her eyes were darting back and forth, trying to catch us in the act. We were just saying that if a certain someone keeps eating like a black hole, she's gonna swallow the entire company's bonus fund. Brooke flashed a perfect smile, playfully pointing her fork at Chloe's massive pile of food, effortlessly dodging the bullet. Chloe practically whined. Oh, come on, Brooke. You are totally playing favorites right now. Ethan is literally starving himself, and you don't say a peep, but the second I eat a little extra, I get roasted. She aggressively bumped her shoulder into mine, giving me this exaggerated, knowing wink. I stood there, looking at Brooke, who was smiling like an absolute goddess, and then at Chloe, who was vibrating with her usual chaotic hyper energy. My childhood best friend was right here, completely clueless and full of mischief. A wild, almost out-of-body feeling washed over me, but lurking right underneath all of this was the dangerously unspoken spark flowing through our secret alt accounts, pulling me back to that hazy, feverish night where the line between wild dream and hardcore reality completely vanished. These two radically different worlds were now crashing into each other, overlapping right in front of my own eyes. Fast forward to the final night before the massive project bid. I hammered away, double-checking every single data point until the whole thing was absolute perfection. It was already 1:30 a.m. The entire office was dead quiet and pitch black, except for the single glowing lamp hanging over my desk. I collapsed back into my chair, totally drained, violently rubbing my throbbing temples as I reached out to finally kill the power on my rig. Boom! My phone screen lit up the darkness. It was a secret text from Brooke, sent straight to my hidden alt account. Still at the office? My chest tightened. I quickly typed back. Just wrapped up. About to head out. You're still awake, Brooke? Trouble sleeping? My palms started sweating. Right after her message, a cute, playful emoji popped up, something the Ice Queen boss literally never used. It felt like a feather just lightly brushed directly against my racing heart. Don't sweat it. We are locked and loaded. Tomorrow is going to be a total breeze, I typed back, trying to play the confident hero. Knowing you're on it makes me feel so much better. The words were super simple, but the raw, absolute trust behind them hit me like a shockwave. A wild rush of heat flooded my chest. Throwing caution to the wind, I fired off an insanely bold text. If you really can't sleep, I can stay up and keep you company for a bit. Or, we could play a little game like last time, just to take your mind off things. The second I hit send, I stopped breathing. This time, I couldn't blame it on the booze, and there was no noise from the next room to hide behind. This bold, reckless move was infinitely more explicit and dangerously real. Brooke's typing indicator kept blinking for what felt like forever. It took so long, I actually started sweating, thinking she was pissed off or just trying to find a gentle way to reject me. But when the message finally came through, it wasn't a text at all. It was a picture. The lighting was super dim, obviously taken in her bedroom, and the angle was insanely suggestive. It only showed everything below her collarbone. She was wearing that familiar silk bathrobe, but the neckline was casually parted way wider than usual. You couldn't see her face, and honestly, nothing was explicitly exposed. Still, that lazy, intimate, and silently inviting vibe hit me way harder than any fully graphic photo ever could. My breath caught in my throat, and my blood started rushing. Brooke, I typed out, my hands literally shaking as I hit send, just needing to confirm this wasn't a hallucination. I can't sleep, so I'm looking for something to keep me occupied. She texted back almost instantly. Her tone still had that faint, maddening hint of playful teasing. Was she talking about me or herself? Or maybe both? I could perfectly picture the look on her face right then. It had to be that slightly mischievous smirk, wrapped up in this undeniable, seductive charm. This was way more than just keeping occupied. I took a deep breath, desperately trying to calm my racing heart and restless body. This is literally pouring gasoline on a fire. Then what do you plan to do about it? She asked, acting exactly like a hunter tossing out bait, just waiting patiently for her prey to bite. What was I supposed to do? Staring at that insanely suggestive photo, my brain was completely hijacked by that wild dream from our business trip, where reality and illusion totally blurred together. And the massive contrast between her usual Ice Queen boss demeanor and this crazy private vulnerability. The last thread of my sanity completely snapped right then and there, and then my phone vibrated again. The new photo she sent was from an even bolder angle. Her robe was pushed way further open, showing off her flawless, snow-white skin. You could subtly see the lace along the edges, making this powerful contrast in texture against the smooth silk. The picture cut off at the exact perfect spot, leaving an endless amount of room for the imagination. My throat instantly tightened, and my mouth went totally dry. This wasn't just a subtle hint anymore. It was basically an outright invitation. Right after that, a voice message popped up. With shaking fingers, I tapped play and pressed the phone hard against my ear. There were no dirty words like I expected, not even a single full sentence. It was just a few quick, heavy, suppressed breaths of air, short, totally alluring, with a tiny little tremor at the end before it suddenly stopped. That sound was way more devastating than any explicit words could ever be. It sounded exactly like the one from my dream. I aggressively chugged a massive gulp of my cold coffee, desperately trying to put out the wicked fire burning deep in my chest. Brooke, you are seriously testing my self-control right now. Vin, can you handle the test? It was like she could look right through the screen and see me losing my mind. The dead, silent, empty office suddenly felt like the most dangerous breeding ground for intimacy. I ground my teeth together and forced out a reply. I can't. Brooke, you win. My head is completely filled with thoughts of you right now. She didn't reply right away. A few minutes later, the WeChat app on my main account suddenly pinged. It was Brooke. The message was strictly business. Send the final version of the proposal to my email so I can review it one last time. We absolutely cannot afford to make any mistakes tomorrow. Head home and get some sleep early. It was like the woman who had just been teasing the hell out of my alt account was a completely different person. The insane disconnect made my head spin. But honestly, it just made everything feel even more thrilling. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to chill out before typing back on my main account. Got it, Brooke. I'll send it over right now. Please get some rest early, too. I shut down my computer and finally walked out of the office building. The night breeze had a nice chill to it, but it couldn't even touch the burning heat in my body or the absolute storm raging in my head. What the hell did Brooke actually mean by all this? Was she just venting some crazy work stress? Or was this some kind of unspoken, dangerous game between adults? A million thoughts crashed into my brain, and I just couldn't untangle the mess. The next day at the project bidding conference, I rolled up with faint dark circles under my eyes. Still, my brain was totally wired on this weird high energy. Brooke, on the other hand, looked absolutely radiant. She was wearing a custom-tailored navy blue skirt suit. Her makeup was totally flawless, and she was radiating pure boss energy. Chloe sat right next to me, leaning in and whispering in admiration. Wow, Brooke is looking incredible today. We definitely had this one in the bag. Her presentation flowed perfectly, smooth as silk, leaving absolutely no room for anyone to criticize. The final result? Zero suspense, just exactly as we expected. We successfully secured the project, a massive win for the company. The whole venue immediately erupted into roaring congratulatory applause. The celebration banquet was held at this totally high-end restaurant, and the team's energy was just off the charts. Everyone lined up to toast Brooke. Seeing her so relaxed was a rare treat, and she actually accepted every single drink they handed her. After downing a few glasses of red wine, this undeniable seductive charm just naturally overflowed from her shimmering eyes. From time to time, her gaze would land right on me. Those looks were brief, yeah, but man, they felt exceptionally burning hot. Chloe leaned in close to my ear, her breath heavy with alcohol, and murmured, "Ethan, look at Brooke. She is so happy today. She looks like a totally different person. Do you think she's fallen in love?" That look on her face is exactly how I looked when I was head over heels for you. My heart instantly skipped a beat, but I forced myself to play it cool. Isn't it perfectly normal to be that happy after landing such a massive project? Chloe narrowed her eyes at me, looking exactly like a sneaky little cat that could see through my lies. A woman's intuition is terrifyingly accurate. Brooke clearly looks like a woman getting completely nourished by love right now. Who do you think the guy could be? I just kept my head down to eat, muttering vaguely. How should I know? Well, it better not be you, Chloe snapped, aggressively stabbing the steak on her plate with her fork. It was half joking, but definitely half warning. Otherwise, the sisterhood Brooke and I have built over all these years is coming to an absolute end. Her words felt like a sharp needle, stabbing precisely into the absolute guiltiest, softest spot of my heart once more. Subconsciously, I glanced over toward Brooke. And of course, she happened to be looking right back. Our eyes locked, the corners of her lips curved up in a slight smirk. She raised her wine glass, offering me this incredibly subtle toast across the noisy crowd. On the surface, the gesture seemed totally ordinary, but because of our little secrets from last night and early this morning, it was packed with a dangerously provocative meaning. My heart completely stopped for a beat, and I hurriedly grabbed my own glass to return the gesture. As the celebration banquet finally drew to a close, Brooke definitely seemed to have drunk a bit too much. Her cheeks were flushed crimson, and her eyes looked wonderfully dazed. Massaging her forehead, she called out, "Please, enjoy the rest of your night, everyone. The alcohol is really starting to get to my head, so I'm gonna head back and rest. Ethan, you're in charge of making sure everyone gets safely into their cabs, and then drive me home." That final sentence, her voice wasn't loud at all, yet it drifted with crystal clear precision right into my ears. Before I could even open my mouth, Chloe immediately stepped forward. "Brooke, let me go back with you instead. Ethan can just stay here and keep everyone company." Chloe's words exploded next to my ear like a sudden clap of thunder. Before I even had a single second to panic, Brooke was already smiling, waving her hand dismissively. Her tone carried a heavy hint of drunkenness. Yet, it was completely non-negotiable. "Chloe, you've drunk quite a bit yourself. Go back and get some rest. Ethan is the project deputy, and there are still some final wrap-up details I need to coordinate with him in the car." Her explanation was completely bulletproof, using official business as a perfect shield, leaving zero room for anyone to argue against it. Chloe opened her mouth, clearly wanting to push back, but in the end, she just swallowed her words. She merely muttered under her breath, "All right then, Brooke. Just remember to let us know in the group chat once you make it home." She turned her head and shot me a fierce glare. Her eyes were packed with a heavy warning, mixed with a trace of subtle, barely hidden grievance. My scalp literally tingled with sheer panic, and I could only bite the bullet and reply, "All right, don't worry about Brooke." The celebration banquet slowly dissolved into the lingering city noise. Ultimately, the only ones left standing by the restaurant entrance, in the cool evening breeze, were me and Brooke, whose figure suddenly looked so incredibly delicate. As the night wind blew past us, her intoxication seemed to hit her noticeably harder. Her steps faltered. I quickly stepped forward and caught her by the arm. "Brooke, careful." She didn't push me away. Instead, she gently leaned a good portion of her weight right against my chest. That familiar, intoxicating fragrance of hers mingled with the sweet scent of red wine, swirling around my senses, feeling significantly more aggressive and tempting than ever before. The designated driver pulled up. I opened the door, shielding the top of her head so she could slide inside first. Brooke looked truly exhausted. The very moment she settled into the car, she gently closed her eyes. She leaned her head softly against the seat back. Sitting right beside her in the dark, my body went entirely rigid, and I honestly didn't dare to move a single muscle. The rhythmic hum of the engine rolled on, but all I could focus on was her head slowly drifting down, finally coming to rest against my shoulder. I held my breath. I was hyper-aware of her body heat radiating against me, along with that intoxicating, faint perfume, teasing my senses with every single breath. I swallowed hard, my throat moving on its own, and my heart hammered in my chest like a wild, relentless drumbeat. Every ounce of logic screamed at me to gently push her away, or, at the absolute very least, slide over and create some distance. But my body was completely frozen in place, utterly pinned by her gravity. Sure, anyone could brush this off as just an innocent mistake. That drive back to her place felt agonizingly long, yet at the exact same time, it vanished in the blink of an eye. "We are here, sir," the driver announced, violently snapping me out of my total daze. I scrambled to reply, "Oh, right, thanks, I appreciate it, man." Shifting my shoulder just a fraction, I murmured in a low, careful voice, "Brooke, wake up. We made it." Brooke slowly fluttered her eyes open. Her gaze was soft and deliciously unfocused, carrying that lazy, ridiculously adorable haze of someone just waking up. She rubbed her eyes, sat up straight, and casually peered out the window. Insanely enough, she didn't seem to care at all that she had just used my shoulder as her personal pillow. Acting like it was no big deal, she popped the car door open. I scrambled out right behind her, tossing one last quick thank you to our driver. The heavy, suffocating silence between us was only broken by the sharp ding of the elevator finally hitting her floor. I kept a steady hand on Brooke's arm as we walked up to her front door. The second it swung open, I was absolutely blasted by that elegant, sweet scent that was uniquely hers. It hit me then. This was the very first time I was stepping foot into Brooke's inner sanctuary, the private space where she lived all alone. "Come on in and chill for a second," she said easily. "Grab a glass of water before you go." Brooke stepped aside, leaving the doorway wide open. Her tone was so damn casual, like this was just some standard polite invitation, but my heart gave a violent, heavy thud. Let us do the math. Late at night, a beautiful single woman's apartment, a nice little buzz from the alcohol, and those unspoken burning secrets simmering right between us. Every single red flag was pointing straight down a wildly dangerous, overwhelmingly seductive path. Standing right there at the threshold, I was being ripped apart on the inside. Don't even worry about it, Brooke. It is getting super late, so I should probably just head out. My own voice came out totally dry, laced with a pathetic weakness I absolutely hated. My brain was screaming at me to turn around and run away immediately. But my feet? They felt like they had sprouted massive roots right into the floorboards. Brooke stood up and smoothly dropped a pair of gray men's slippers right at my feet. She did it so naturally, like she had rehearsed this exact move countless times before. Without skipping a beat, she spun around and walked deeper into her apartment, totally confident I would follow. I sucked in a massive breath and bent down to kick off my shoes. The slippers were completely brand new, but, insanely enough, they fit me absolutely perfectly. That little revelation made my heart skip another frantic beat. Defeated by my own desires, I followed her straight into the living room. The whole place was styled with a simple, utterly chic elegance. The air was completely thick with that exact same intoxicating scent she always wore. She casually shrugged off her coat and hung it up, revealing a gorgeous, clinging silk blouse underneath. Without me even noticing when it happened, the top two buttons were already undone, flashing a teasing glimpse of her delicate collarbone. So, do you just want water? Or something else? She sauntered right over to the island in her open-concept kitchen. With her back fully turned to me, she pulled open the fridge door. As she bent down to grab something, her tight pencil skirt stretched dangerously taut, perfectly framing every single one of her stunning curves. My throat instantly went dry as a desert. I felt like I was dying of thirst. Water is totally fine. Thanks, Brooke. She pulled 2 bottles of mineral water from the fridge. When she spun back around to face me, by some absolute miracle, the third button of her blouse had magically popped open too. She handed me the bottle, deliberately letting her soft fingers slowly drag across the back of my hand. The ice-cold condensation made me physically shudder. What's wrong? Are you scared of me? Brooke teased, a wicked smirk playing on her lips. I aggressively twisted the cap off and practically chugged the water. A rogue stream of water escaped, trickling down my chin and soaking right into my collar. Brooke, seriously, you have had way too much to drink. She just let out this breathy, arrogant little laugh and took a bold step closer. A dizzying wave of her expensive perfume and sweet alcohol completely swallowed me. Funny, she purred. You definitely were not this cowardly last night. Without warning, her fingertips reached up and traced my burning, feverish cheek. Her touch was scalding hot. My control snapped. I violently grabbed her wrist, locking her in place as our heavy, frantic breaths instantly collided. Her long eyelashes gave a tiny tremble, but she didn't even try to pull back. Well, now we know exactly who is failing the test, she whispered, her voice impossibly soft and mocking. Her free hand dropped straight down to my belt buckle. The absolute second I heard that faint metallic click, every shred of my sanity completely shattered. I gripped her fiercely by the waist and hoisted her effortlessly up onto the kitchen island. The water bottle slipped and crashed to the floor, completely forgotten. She let out a shocked, breathy gasp as her legs instinctively locked tightly around my waist, sending that strict pencil skirt riding all the way up to her hips. The second my rough palm branded her bare skin, a massive shudder ripped through her entire body. To the bedroom, she practically panted, sinking her teeth into my earlobe as her fingers fiercely tangled into my hair. I carried her down the hall like a man possessed. We totally smashed a vase on the way in, but neither of us gave a single damn. Still locked together, we crashed hard onto her massive, cloud-like bed. It was game over. My muscle memory completely took the wheel, and there was no turning back. Every single touch, every heated movement, it mirrored that fateful night on our business trip with terrifying perfection. Now you know it wasn't just a dream, she whispered. Her voice was dangerously raspy, laced with a triumphant, wicked smile. I crashed my lips onto hers, completely shattering whatever shred of rationality I had left. We were like 2 patches of parched brush caught in a brutal drought, instantly erupting into an uncontrollable wildfire from a single, desperate spark. Brooke's response was absolute madness, entirely beyond anything my wildest teenage fantasies could have ever prepared me for. Swallowed by the pitch-black room, my senses cranked into overdrive. I could feel every jagged breath she took and every electric shiver trembling through her body. We tangled together and claimed each other like starving beasts, clawing and grasping, as if we were desperately trying to tear each other apart and swallow the other whole. I completely lost track of the hours before our chaotic storm finally began to fade. Neither of us dared to speak a word. The heavy, dead silence was only broken by the sound of our ragged breathing slowly evening out. But the second my sanity started crawling back, a suffocating tidal wave of sheer panic and deep uncertainty crashed down on my chest. I anxiously propped myself up on one elbow, straining my eyes in the dark to get a good read on her face. Even in the shadows, her eyes were piercingly bright, swirling with a complicated mess of raw emotions that I just could not figure out. Brooke, I started to say, my throat sounding incredibly rough, but she instantly reached up and pressed a single, delicate finger against my lips to silence me. Don't talk right now, she whispered softly. Her tone carried that heavy, lazy warmth of what we just did, yet it still held a sharp trace of her usual bossy authority. No arguments from you. Go wash up. She gave my chest a gentle shove, staying firmly planted in the bed as she pulled the thick blanket up, leaving only her bare, smooth shoulders exposed to the cool air. I stumbled out of the bed, my legs feeling totally like jelly as I made my way to the bathroom. As the scalding water washed over me, the pure absurdity and lingering terror of the situation finally punched me in the gut. I had actually just crossed the ultimate forbidden line with Brooke, my oldest childhood friend, my untouchable boss, and the long-held secret star of all my stupid teenage fantasies. Just like that, our entire dynamic had violently shifted into unknown territory. When I finally dragged myself out of the shower, I stood awkwardly by the bed in a damp towel, feeling completely lost. It's way too late for this. Go crash in the guest bedroom. She casually pointed toward the room next door with a tone so perfectly even, it was absolutely impossible to tell if she was totally thrilled or completely pissed off. I opened my mouth, desperate to ask, and then what happens? What the hell are we supposed to be now? But every single word choked tight in my throat. In the end, I just cowardly mumbled an okay. Tossing and turning on that cold guest bed, I was completely wired and entirely robbed of sleep. My muscles were totally dead and exhausted, but my brain was buzzing with agonizing clarity. I strained my ears, but there wasn't a single peep coming from the next room. It seemed like Brooke had effortlessly drifted off to sleep without a care in the world. The following morning, I was brutally yanked awake by my phone violently buzzing against the nightstand. I clumsily fumbled for the device and squinted at the bright screen. It was a loud and cheerful text Chloe had just dropped into our 3-person work group chat. Hey Brooke, Ethan, are our 2 reigning champions awake yet? Lunch is totally on me today to celebrate your massive success. Pick literally anywhere you want to eat. My chest seized up in a total panic. I frantically swiped over to my private messages with Brooke, only to find absolutely nothing. Total radio silence. I sucked in a massive breath to steady my nerves and typed back. Just woke up. At the exact same second, Brooke's message popped up. Her response was brutally concise and all business. Great. You guys can go ahead and pick the spot. Her digital tone was so casually perfect, you'd think absolutely 0 lines were crossed last night. Flash forward to noon inside a fancy private restaurant room. When I dragged myself in, Chloe was already eagerly flipping through the menu like a kid. Spotting me at the door, she immediately waved me over with a grin. Ethan, hurry up and get over here to order. We absolutely have to do some serious damage to Brooke's wallet today. Feeling sickeningly uneasy, I sank into the chair beside her, but my paranoid eyes just kept darting back toward the entrance. Brooke strolled in right on the dot, not a second late. She had swapped into a stunningly casual outfit, her long hair pinned up in a loose clip, her makeup looking effortlessly elegant. Her entire aura was just as frustratingly refined and untouchable as it always was. She gave Chloe a bright, easy smile before her sharp gaze finally landed on me, giving a crisp, professional nod. Ethan, her eyes were deeply, chillingly calm, and her smile was so brutally polite. There was 0 difference between how she looked at me and how she looked at Chloe. It honestly felt like the wild, uninhibited woman who had been losing her mind with me just a few hours ago was nothing more than a cruel, feverish hallucination. I painfully forced that entire meal down without actually tasting a single damn bite. Chloe just kept happily chattering away, rambling on about project updates and juicy office gossip. Brooke would casually chime in here and there, her voice flowing with a gentle, friendly warmth. She even casually reached over and picked the cilantro out of my bowl, just like she always did, knowing I hated it. On the surface, every single thing was exactly the same as it had always been. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Right after we paid, Chloe got snatched away by an urgent work call, suddenly leaving just me and Brooke stranded together outside the restaurant doors. The air between us instantly thickened, turning heavy and dangerously awkward. I finally scraped together enough guts to look her dead in the eye. Brooke, look, about us. But she ruthlessly cut me off, simply raising an elegant hand to tuck a stray piece of windblown hair behind her ear. She stared right through me with an absolutely unflinching gaze. Ethan, last night was just a mistake. She paused for a split second, letting the silence sting before delivering the final blow. It's perfectly normal for 2 adults to act on a temporary, stupid impulse. Do not overthink this, and definitely don't let it weigh you down. Her voice was so devastatingly nonchalant, she might as well have been telling me it was going to rain today. My chest tightened like it had just taken a sledgehammer to the ribs, throbbing with a dull, bitter ache. So, last night was really just a meaningless accident? My voice cracked, sounding completely hollow. What else would it be? Brooke shot back, her piercing eyes scanning me with a cold, unmistakable warning. Focus on your damn job. And don't you dare let Chloe or anyone else catch on to this. With that icy command, she flagged down a cab. But right as she pulled the door open, she threw a casual smile over her shoulder. See you at the office. The cab merged into the morning traffic and vanished, leaving me standing there like an absolute idiot. The morning sun suddenly felt harsh and blinding. To her, I was just a quick, no-strings-attached hookup to blow off some steam. Just a cheap thrill, while I was pathetically out here catching real feelings. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Brooke, sent straight to my secret alt account. Just 4 little words. Honey, see you tonight. I stared blankly at the screen, looking back down the empty street where her cab had just disappeared. My stomach completely dropped. What kind of twisted game was she playing? Back at the office, it was business as usual. The heavy door to Brooke's private suite was practically bolted shut. I slumped at my desk, staring like a zombie at my glowing monitor. That word, accident, dug into my chest like a rusty knife. But that sweet little honey on my hidden app, that was the bait on a hook, dragging me by the throat and driving me crazy. Later that afternoon, Brooke ran our department meeting. She stepped in wearing a razor-sharp tailored suit. Her voice was ice cold, her points flawlessly structured. She looked like a totally different human being than the woman from last night. Sitting in the back row, I couldn't stop staring at her moving lips as she spoke. My mind kept flashing back to how she panted against my ear in the dark. As if feeling my gaze, she looked up, her eyes scanning the room and locking with mine for a fraction of a second. Then she just smoothly looked away, treating me like just another nameless grunt in the crowd. The meeting wrapped, and chairs scraped as everyone scrambled for the door. I dragged my feet packing up and fell behind the pack. Just as Brooke reached the doorway, she stopped, glanced over her shoulder, and dropped her voice so only I could hear. You are on overtime tonight. Draft the project review report and have it on my desk. That bossy, absolute tone left exactly zero room for argument. She spun around and marched off, the sharp clack of her stilettos echoing down the hall like gunshots. Fast forward to the evening, and I was the last sad soul left in the entire office. By the time I slammed the final period on that brutal report, the clock hit 11:30 p.m. I stretched my aching back and fired the file straight to Brooke's inbox. A split second later, my screen flashed bright. It was a location pin from Brooke on the alt account, a luxury hotel just blocks from the building. Room 168. Key card is at the front desk. Get here now. The text was brutally blunt. No punctuation, just pure, unfiltered command. Staring at the screen, my pulse hammered in my ears with a deafening roar. Ice Queen in the boardroom by day, sending me a filthy hotel invite by night. That insane Jekyll and Hyde contrast was a million times more intoxicating than any basic flirtation. I snatched up my jacket, sprinted downstairs, flagged a taxi, and sped straight for the hotel. Halfway there, my phone buzzed again. Another ping on the burner account. I am fresh out of the shower, waiting for you. Capped off with a wicked, suggestive little emoji. I squeezed my eyes shut and melted into the leather seat. I felt exactly like a helpless puppet, and she held every single string. I knew damn well I was walking right into a blazing inferno, but I could not stop myself from diving headfirst into the flames. The massive suite was bathed in dim, moody lighting, wrapping the whole room in a heavy, seductive haze. Brooke was lounging sideways on a velvet sofa, draped only in a crisp white hotel robe, lazily swirling a glass of red wine. The knot on her waist was barely hanging on, leaving her neckline plunging dangerously low. She was dripping wet from the shower, damp hair clinging to her bare shoulders, a soft, flushed pink glow burning on her cheeks. As I stepped inside, she did not even bother standing. She just tilted her chin up, her predatory gaze sinking its claws right into me. I reviewed your report. It is a solid write-up, she murmured, swirling the dark wine, giving absolutely nothing away. I clicked the door shut, walked over until my knees brushed her legs, and kept my mouth completely shut. When the tension is this thick, words are a total waste of breath. She lifted herself on her tiptoes and smashed her lips against mine, tasting of rich vintage wine and pure, suffocating dominance. The flimsy belt gave way with a single tug. This time, there was no drunken blur to blame, no hazy dream to hide behind. Every single touch felt terrifyingly real. From the leather couch straight to the massive king bed, she took absolute control. 100 times wilder than the night before. It bordered on absolute reckless frenzy. It was like she was violently venting her frustrations, or desperately trying to prove something to herself. By the time we collapsed, both of us were drenched in sweat, looking like we had nearly drowned. She lay flat against my chest, her breathing still heavy, her fingers mindlessly tracing small circles on my bare skin. "Ethan," she murmured suddenly, her voice thick and raspy. "Let's keep whatever this is a secret from Chloe for now." The next morning was Saturday. When I finally woke up, the space beside me was completely empty. I heard the shower running in the bathroom. On the nightstand sat a brand new set of men's casual clothes, price tags still dangling. They were my exact size. Tucked underneath was a sticky note scrawled in elegant handwriting. "Put these on. Let's grab breakfast together." I picked up the shirt, and the jaw-dropping price on the tag literally made me gasp. The water stopped, and Brooke stepped out, wrapped in a simple white towel, bringing a cloud of steam and the sweet scent of peach body wash with her. She paused her towel drying for a second, catching me staring at the clothes. "What's wrong? Do they not fit?" "No, they fit," I replied, folding up the sticky note and slipping it into my pocket. "But Brooke, these are way too expensive. Just consider it a little reward from me." She brushed it off effortlessly, casually walking over to the vanity to start her skincare routine. "You performed exceptionally well last night." Through the vanity mirror, I caught the corners of her lips curving into a knowing, wicked smirk. Later, at a window seat down in the hotel restaurant, Brooke was leisurely picking at a fancy Western-style breakfast. My appetite was entirely gone. I just sat there, anxiously stirring my coffee. "So, what are your plans for the afternoon?" she asked with feigned indifference, delicately cutting a piece of her fried egg. "I'm heading back to the office to finish up that report," I replied. She gave a slight nod. "I'm going into the office too. I have a few things to take care of." Once we finished eating, she gracefully dabbed the corners of her mouth with a napkin. She locked eyes with me. "We leave separately." It was phrased like a suggestion, but her tone left absolutely zero room for argument. I knew exactly what she was doing. A secret office romance meant keeping up appearances. "All right," I agreed, grabbing my jacket. "I'll head out first." But the very second I stood up, her foot slipped under the table, toes lightly brushing against my calf. The movement was so quick and subtle, it felt like a feather, yet the teasing intent behind it was loud and clear. My entire body went rigid. I snapped my gaze to her, but she just kept her head down, calmly sipping her juice. She looked the picture of pure innocence, as if that wicked little gesture was entirely in my head. God, this woman. I took a deep, steadying breath, spun on my heel, and marched out of the restaurant to head straight to the office. Staring blankly at my computer screen, I couldn't process a single word. My head was entirely consumed by Brooke, her strictly professional resting face, the wild look in her eyes from last night, and that maddening little foot under the breakfast table. All these conflicting images clashed in my brain, turning my mind into an absolute chaotic mess. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Brooke finally showed up. She totally bypassed our department and walked straight into her vice president's office. Through the frosted glass wall, I could make out her silhouette. She was sitting rigidly behind her desk, looking completely serious and focused. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. She had just texted a photo to my burner account, a shot taken from under her desk. She wasn't wearing any stockings. One bare foot had slipped halfway out of her sleek black stiletto. Her slender ankle and striking red toenails popped beautifully against the dark carpet. The caption simply read, "My feet are freezing." I gulped hard, my Adam's apple bobbing. I typed back, "The air conditioning is set way too low in there." She instantly replied, "I want someone to come keep them warm." That blatant invitation hit me like a ton of bricks. I shot my head up and stared straight toward her office. She was looking down at her phone, a devilish little smile playing at the corners of her mouth. A few minutes later, I grabbed a random file that needed a signature, marched over to her door, gave it a quick knock, and stepped inside. "Brooke, this document needs your immediate review and signature." I placed the folder on her desk, keeping my voice deadpan and strictly professional. Brooke looked up, pulled the document toward her, and started rapidly scanning the pages. Her expression was intimidatingly serious. "The data right here needs to be verified one more time," she stated, circling a section with her pen. Playing along, I leaned over the desk to get a closer look at what she was pointing out. As the space between us practically vanished, the intoxicating scent of her perfume washed over me. Right at that exact second, her bare foot snaked out from under the desk and pressed with pinpoint accuracy right onto the top of my shoe. The warm, soft pressure froze me right in my tracks. My entire body went dangerously rigid, and I nearly lost my balance. Yet, her face didn't change one bit. She kept using her icy, boss lady tone to critique the meaningless file. Also, the logic in this section is completely flawed. Restructure it immediately. And all the while, Her toes were ruthlessly tracing slow, agonizing circles across the top of my foot. That insane contrast in her attitude sent a nervous jolt straight through my skull. Do you understand? She finally looked up at me, her eyes dead clear and completely composed, acting like she wasn't the one playing footsie under the desk just a second ago. Got it, I rasped out. Go fix it then. I need it by the end of the day. She pulled her foot back, slipped her heel on, and snapped right back into that icy, untouchable boss mode. I grabbed the heavy file and stumbled out of her office, my arms and legs feeling like pure jelly. A cold sweat slicked down my back. This woman, she's an absolute demon of a seductress. When clock-out time rolled around, the late shift crew slowly packed up and cleared out one by one. I stalled and dragged my feet as long as I could until I was the last guy standing. The light in Brooke's private office still glaringly on. My phone suddenly buzzed with a text. It was Brooke. Is that revised report done yet? Bring it in. Let me see it. Clutching the paperwork like a shield, I walked back into the lion's den. She was leaning back in her massive executive chair. She took the file from my hands, but didn't even glance at it, just tossing it straight onto the desk. Then she stood up, strolled over to the door, and with a sharp click, locked us in. My heart literally stopped beating. She slowly turned around, stalking toward me step by step with this wicked, predatory smirk on her face. Now, no one will bother us. She reached out, hooking her finger under my belt buckle, and dragged me right up to the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the city skyline was just lighting up, the dark glass perfectly reflecting our tangled silhouettes. This wasn't anything like that hotel room. This was pure, reckless adrenaline, the illicit thrill of a secret affair playing out right on her massive office desk. Let's just say, we put on a completely different kind of show. After that extracurricular report was finally finished, she leaned against the desk, smoothing down her wrinkled clothes and messy hair, her cheeks burning cherry red. I bent down, scraping together the papers scattered all over the carpet. The report looks totally fine now. You can submit it tomorrow, she panted softly, trying to catch her breath. Her tone snapped right back to icy calm, like the wild woman from a second ago was just a fever dream. Yeah, I mumbled, keeping my eyes glued to the floor. Let's go, she sighed, grabbing her purse. What do you want for dinner tonight? I'm cooking. I froze, blinking at her like an idiot. She gave me a tiny, amused smile. What? Are we only allowed to use each other in bed? We can't share a home-cooked meal after we get up? That totally shut me up. I just trailed behind her like a lost puppy all the way back to her apartment. She kicked off her heels, threw on some comfy sweats, tossed her hair into a messy bun, and vanished right into the kitchen. Watching her chop veggies in a little apron, that cutthroat corporate shark vanished. She just exuded a warm domestic vibe instead. I leaned against the doorframe, just staring at her back, feeling completely dazed and out of my depth. What the hell even are we? Our relationship was a massive, tangled mess. Dinner was super quiet. No shop talk at all. Just her rambling about random, completely harmless everyday stuff. Weirdly enough, it felt nice. A strange, bizarre kind of peace. After we finished, I jumped up to clear the plates. She stood right next to me washing them, the warm, soapy water splashing softly in the sink. Ethan, she said out of nowhere, if Chloe finds out, what are you gonna do? She wouldn't even look at me, scrubbing a plate like her life depended on it. I froze completely. Brooke, let's get married. She slammed the faucet off. Brooke spun around, her soaking wet hands aggressively grabbing me by the collar. The sharp smell of lemon dish soap hit my nose. Say that again. Let's get married, I repeated, shocked by how rock steady my voice was. This isn't an accident. It's not just a hookup. It's that I want you. Something in her eyes completely broke, then pieced itself back together, freezing into this bitter, self-mocking smirk. Is this your big, heroic attempt to take responsibility just because we slept together? Her breathing got heavy and shallow, her nails digging deep into my arm. You little bastard. You beautiful menace, I whispered back, biting her earlobe. Are you marrying me or what? Right there, leaning against the kitchen sink. We kissed, completely wiping out the dish rack in the process. Suddenly, she shoved me back, bolted into her bedroom, and marched back out, slamming her legal documents right into my chest. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Meet me at the entrance of City Hall. If you're late, you're dead to me. Stepping out of City Hall the next morning, the bright city sun felt absolutely blinding. Brooke gripped our little red marriage certificate, holding it up to the light over and over like it was a dream. Her lips were pressed tight, but that ecstatic spark in her eyes, totally impossible to hide. I didn't say a word. I just reached out and gripped her hand, holding on for dear life. Her palm felt a little slick with sweat, just like mine. Ethan. She suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. Turning to stare at me with a gaze as sharp as a blade, she whispered, "It is not too late to back out, you know. The divorce counter is right over there." I let out a low chuckle and leaned right into her ear. "In your dreams, Brooke. I dug this trap myself. And now that you have jumped in, do not even think about climbing out." She gave a soft little huff, but the corners of her mouth curved all the way up. I pulled her along, guiding her gently into the passenger seat. But reality was waiting, and what must come will eventually come. We had set up a dinner date with Chloe for tonight, picking out her absolute favorite local spot to drop the bomb. When I pushed open the door to our private room, Chloe was sitting there with her head down, mindlessly scrolling through her phone. She had a straw clamped between her lips, casually sipping her juice. But the second she saw us walk in, her eyes lit up like fireworks. "You guys are finally here. I am practically starving to death," she beamed. "Wait, what is up with you two? You look so weird right now." Brooke didn't say a single word back. Instead, she reached into her purse, pulled out that little red book, and gently slid it across the table right in front of her. The bright smile on Chloe's face froze completely solid. She stared dead at that marriage certificate for a solid 30 seconds. So stunned she didn't even notice her straw slipping right back down into her glass. Slowly, so agonizingly slowly, she raised her head. Her gaze darted frantically back and forth between me and Brooke. Her face morphed from total blankness to absolute shock, before finally twisting into a heavy, suffocating wave of pure fury and ice-cold betrayal. "What is the meaning of this?" Her voice was actually shaking. "Exactly what it looks like," Brooke replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down with bone-chilling calmness. Chloe violently snapped her glare right at me, the edges of her eyes flashing a fierce, tearful red in an instant. "Ethan, you absolute jerk. When on earth did you two even get together?" "Chloe, please, just let me try to explain," I stammered out. "Shut up." She snatched that red book and slammed it fiercely back onto the table. Leaping right out of her seat, tears began streaming down her face in absolute torrents. "Brooke, I treated you like my own flesh and blood. You knew damn well that I love him. You knew it." She was practically screaming at the top of her lungs, her voice making the entire room tremble. Brooke just sat there, watching her breakdown in absolute, unbroken silence. She waited until Chloe's rage settled just a tiny fraction before she finally spoke up. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm, unyielding, and totally ruthless. "Yes, I knew, but I have loved him for years too. I loved him back then, and I still love him now. And as of today, he is my husband." It was like someone had just pulled the plug, draining every last drop of strength right out of Chloe. She collapsed back into her chair, burying her face in her hands as her shoulders shook with heavy, ragged sobs. Neither Brooke nor I dared to say another word. Course after course was served, filling the entire table with food, but no one touched their chopsticks. The only sound in that room was Chloe's muffled, heartbreaking crying. I had absolutely no idea how long we sat there before she finally lifted her head. Her makeup was a total mess, and her eyes were painfully swollen and bloodshot. She locked her gaze on Brooke, enunciating every single syllable with razor-sharp clarity. "Brooke, from this day forward, you are dead to me. I do not have a sister." Then she snapped that dead gaze toward me, her eyes as cold as shattered ice. "And Ethan, we are entirely through." The second those words left her mouth, she grabbed her purse and stormed straight out of the room. She didn't look back once, slamming the door behind her with a massive bang. The impact made every bowl and plate on our table rattle. I just sat there, staring blankly at the vibrating door. My chest felt incredibly tight, weighed down by a sickening guilt. Beside me, Brooke reached over, squeezing my hand with a fierce, grounding grip. Her fingertips were completely ice cold. "Just let her have some time to clear her head," she whispered. Flash forward 2 months later, at our company's annual gala. Brooke looked absolutely stunning in a custom-made evening gown. That diamond ring on her finger flashed blindingly under the gorgeous venue lights. As the vice president, she confidently took the stage to deliver her big speech, while I sat proudly at the main table, cheering her on. Chloe was seated right at the adjacent table, her silhouette looking surprisingly fragile and delicate in the dim light. Halfway through the night, she stood up to make her exit, but her high heel slipped. Without even thinking, I reached out my arm to steady her. "Thanks," she muttered, immediately pulling her arm back. Her smile was completely distant, strictly professional. But out of nowhere, Brooke was already standing right behind us, resting her hand naturally on my shoulder like a silent claim. "Chloe, you will be the one taking charge of the marketing department starting next year." Chloe slowly raised her eyes, her gaze locking intensely with ours. She picked up her glass of champagne, downing the entire thing in a single, defiant gulp. The corners of her lips suddenly curled up into that familiar, mischievous smirk from the old days. Sure thing. But Brooke, a kid who sneaks sweets behind someone's back, had better be ready for their punishment. Right on cue, the venue lights dimmed down low, and a smooth dance track began to play. Brooke gave me a gentle, subtle push straight toward Chloe. Go on. Ask your ex for a dance. As Chloe's hand came up to rest softly on my shoulder, Brooke turned to the waiter. Bring us 3 wine glasses, she ordered. The 2 women shared a knowing, mischievous smile across the room, exactly like those nostalgic childhood nights when they used to share their deepest secrets. Perhaps some dynamics never actually require you to choose between one or the other. If you are hooked on this story, please drop a like and do not forget to follow. This channel will keep bringing you the absolute best new web novels and manga recaps.